Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is your boy CIZZ. You dig live action. You already see the hat. Kansas City, Missouri. You dig what I'm saying? Look, 816 babies to the 913. We sending love out to y'all today. Thank you to everyone from the town that is continuing to, starting to, or has in the past listened to an episode of what was formerly known as the Culture Talks podcast, what is now known as the Carla Stetzer Show. We appreciate you. We appreciate your support, love. And as always, I tell you every single week, this upcoming week, we coming back with a fire guest. And I ain't lied to you yet. Here we are with yet another fire guest. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, or you're watching this on another video platform, you know who we got here right now. You know who we got here right now. Listen, if you don't know, now you know. Go ahead and introduce yourself, my brother.
Appreciate it, man. Dontavious here. Dontavious Young. I go by DT or Don. Owner of Equal Minded Cafe. I'm an educator, counselor, and hustler. That's just doing it.
I love it.
There's a lot more I could break down into, but we'll get into it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. First thing first, man, I want you to tell the story on how we met the first time. If you remember the first time we met. If you don't, ask for a hint. I'll give you a little hint and see if it sparks anything. But
I'm pretty sure you came into the shop talking about the podcast.
All right. So I'm gonna hit you with the hint. Chiefs game, Super Bowl, Power and Light.
Me and Naeem, we met in line, standing in line, man, going into Power and Light during the Super Bowl.
Yes, sir. Let me tell y'all, ladies and gentlemen, this man Dontavious is smooth. He's a smooth talker. This is what my brother did. He pulled up. We in line, right? It's a long line. That's a long line at that point. So me and my boy Jay is in the line, and Dontavious come up. He's like, "Oh, what's up, brother? What's popping? How you been, man?" He said, "Oh, how's things going?" I'm looking at him. I'm like, "Listen, I don't know this Negro from nowhere." I said, "Who is this man?" And then he's like, "Yeah, man, how you been?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm straight, bro. I'm good. How you been?" Because I'm not about to be like, "Who the hell are you?" So then finally, we about 3 minutes into like a fake conversation, and he's like, "Nah, I'm just playing with you, dog. I just didn't want to wait in the line."
And I had you really questioning, bro. You was like, "Do I know him?"
I was like, he did it so smooth. I dead thought I knew who you were somehow and just forgot who you were. I felt hella disrespectful on my part. I was like, damn, I don't remember bro's name, nothing. But no, it was a smooth way to meet both you and Naeem. Ladies and gentlemen, if you guys listen to the podcast, Naeem has actually been on the show twice, and most recently about 2 episodes ago. So I met both of these 2 individuals at the same time. They both, when I see one, I typically see the other nearby, and we'll get into the reasons why that is. But with that being said, man, yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself. Where'd you grow up? Let's start there. I know you have an interesting story in regards to where you grew up and your early life in terms of high school and middle school. So yeah, just share a little bit about your early life and the life of DT.
Cool. So, I've lived in a lot of different places growing up. I've been kind of thrown back and forth between different parts of Iowa and different parts of Missouri, a little bit of Kansas over on the Kansas side in Overland Park for a little while. But I was born in Waterloo, Iowa. Some people might know about that because of the Battle of Waterloo from a long time ago. Some people might say that battle's still going on there, man. There's a lot of gang violence and terrible things going on in the streets down there. No type of guidance for the youth. But that's where I was born. Lived there until about 3rd grade. Then I moved to Kansas City, Missouri, actually, for about 2 years. Then that was when I moved over to the Overland Park side for a little while. Then got into some trouble out there, got kicked out of school and got sent back to Iowa. Lived in Waterloo again for about 2-3 years, started getting in trouble there. I had my best friend was murdered, actually. My best friend and cousin, Tay Money, Martavius Johnson, rest in peace. He was murdered, and I pretty much just made a pact with myself that day, man, when he died, that I wanted to make a difference in my life and make a difference in a lot of other people's lives as well, be someone who's remembered positively by as many people as possible. So that was, I made that pact with myself at like 14 years old, and kept moving, started doing things differently. But still, thinking I'm smarter than everybody else, doing dumb stuff. So I got into some more trouble later on in high school, living in a different part of Iowa. And, but still got back on my feet, finished college, did 2 years of community college up there in Iowa, then moved back up here to run a business. I got a business degree, associate's degree in business, and came back up here to run the business. My family had a building here that was foreclosed that we had been fixing up for a long time on truce. A lot of people, question truce, but it was an opportunity. And, a lot of stuff in between then and now, of course, because we have the business and I'm still doing a lot of other things on the side. But yeah, man, that was that's the long story short of my upbringing, a lot of back and forth and, a lot of trouble here and there and a lot of lessons learned.
I love it. I love it. I wanted to ask you, like, prior to 14, prior to, your best friend passing away, what do you think, obviously at that time, it's hard to realize because we're young and we don't really think that way. But right now, what do you think it was that really made it challenging for you to, get along with the standard process of life and not get in trouble and not, I don't know, what do you mean by trouble, but act out or in whatever ways you might have been acting out in? What do you think was like the root of that? And the reason I ask is because later in this conversation, we're going to get into what you're studying for school, and we're going to get into some topics around that. And I think that'll, giving a groundwork around your experience and what you felt were the reasons behind that behavior at that age will help us in that conversation later.
Most definitely. I would definitely owe a lot of it to a lack of guidance, especially a lack of male guidance. I was raised by all females, man. Like my mom and my grandma, those are my best friends, but they're also my superheroes. You know what I'm saying? So, the lack of guidance, and then not only lack of guidance, but the lack of sense of belonging, I would say. The reason my theory, at least, a lot of people get involved in gangs or the wrong side of things, or even sometimes the better side of things, because they want a sense of belonging. They want people to give them confirmation of value, and help them learn what their value is. So for me being that young and not having any guidance, and my mom and grandma kind of giving me almost too many opportunities to kind of do my own thing. I met certain people and I just naturally, subconsciously just kind of wanted to be with them because it made me feel like I was fitting in somewhere. You know what I'm saying? And once you start fitting into that, you start to see yourself in that light permanently, and you start to care about the people around you as well, and you would do anything for them. So then when it comes down to, are you gonna ride or not, it is what it is, And we don't need to talk too much about it, but the type of trouble we was doing, man, it was like it was breaking into houses, it was stealing guns, it was, what I'm saying, doing this, running up on dude, like jumping these people or getting into fights at these parties. So it was pretty dangerous stuff.
Right.
I watched a lot of people keep doing that just never stops. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of my friends ended the same way my cousin did.
So a lot of people, when they think of Iowa, they don't particularly pair Iowa with that type of lifestyle, that type of experience. So what is your thoughts around what you think, I don't know, categorizes a quote unquote inner city? People always want to put, a big city like Chicago or a big city like New York. But the reality is these neighborhoods, these underserved neighborhoods, are everywhere across the United States of America, in every state, in every crevice of this country. And, when we think about, how our children are being raised and the challenges that they're facing, especially in, minority communities, what do you think are some foundational principles that need to be implemented in young men and young women's lives in these communities at an early age that we're not seeing happen? If that makes sense. If you need me to repeat the question, I can.
I think I know what you're saying. Just how we can work within all of these communities, is what you're saying, to prevent that from happening.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's millions of people that are facing these challenges in these communities, but what do you think, due to, what you've been studying, due to your experiences, due to your constant hand inside of, community efforts here in Kansas City, what do you think are some principles that, need to be instilled in young children at an early age that can help them navigate this tough process of being a young teen and trying to find themselves?
Well, I would say one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is the power in unity and working together in things. I think that is something that we should strengthen, a core value that we should strengthen within our youth, um, because we are always stronger together, no matter what. But on top of that, of course, guidance, which I already touched on. But one thing that a theory I have also that I feel like a lot of people don't touch on actually is not only doing something for the youth, the minority youth, but also giving minority exposure to the majority. We need to expose the majority to a lot more of the cultural things that we have, a lot more of the beauty that there's behind Black people, a lot more of the, you know, just amazingness that minorities have, man. Just exposing white people to it, exposing them to the problems that we have as well, the bad side of it. Um, and so I personally believe that by giving people those experiences, that's the only way that we can promote more unity between both of us. Um,
I love that. And I think this you'll probably answer similarly to my follow-up question, but how do you think we can bridge that gap? Because I feel like a lot of people, if they weren't provided the opportunity to interact with other communities, they don't know how to communicate with other communities. So one thing I noticed, being an equal-minded cafe, is that there's a diverse amount of people coming in to the space, and the love and the respect is given equally on all parts. And I always appreciate that when I'm in there, white, Asian, Black, young, old. I've seen 70-year-old white women come in to get drinks. I've seen 70-year-old Black women come in to get drinks. I've seen young bucks come in. I've seen all types of people. So I guess, how do you think we can build and bridge the gap between these, these different communities? Because we're different culturally, but at the end of the day, we're one human race. So how do we create that thought process that, we're all, plants in one garden, right?
right. That's a tough question. It's something that I think about a lot when I study psychology, and as I'm talking to people in the cafe, and I think about it a lot. But it's one of the things that um, I plan to do a lot more research on as I become a counselor for kids in urban districts, and I try to become the best counselor possible to as many different types of kids as possible. It's one of the biggest questions is how do you give every kid the same type of guidance, or the same level of guidance, I should say. How do you give equity to the kids who need a little bit more? How do you provide those things day in and day out, without getting burnt out, which most people do in the education system? But it's a tough question, like I said, and I think part of the reason that I'm able to give that experience to a lot of people is because of the different sides I have. I have a Black family and I have a white family. You know what I'm saying? I grew up with a pretty diverse set of friends. Waterloo, Iowa, where I grew up, the schools I went to were always at least 50 to 60% minority. So that was always minority kids growing up, as well as moving to Overland Park for even 2-3 years that I lived there. That's a completely different culture, and getting exposed to that, as well as moving back to Iowa, to a different part of Iowa, different type of culture, as well as just traveling a lot, doing a lot of different things, and making those mistakes, but also the lessons that I learned from them, is really what gives me the type of true empathy to really communicate with people on that level. And empathy, we talk about it a lot in school, but I feel like it's something that can't really be taught that well, man.
I like that. I like that. But I do definitely think that's an important word. I'm glad that's what you kind of wrapped it up on right there with the term empathy, because I think that's truly one of the key principles, the key foundations to unity. If we want to keep it simple, unity, and regardless of race classification or age or social status, whatever it might be, I think the key is empathy. And if we can all be empathetic and try to come from a root of love, from a place of understanding, that the world will, definitely move towards a more beautiful space, I guess you could say. But I did want to rewind back to your roots to Kansas City. So how did your family end up in Kansas City? Is family from Kansas City and then you somehow ended up in Iowa, yeah, where are the roots to Kansas City? What's the connection? Somehow you guys had this random property in Kansas City. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, most definitely. So my grandmother, right? She has, I want to say 7 siblings, and about 40 years ago, maybe 50 years ago now, one of her brothers and one of her sisters moved to Kansas City. They lived in Kansas City, Missouri for about 5-10 years, and then they moved to Lee's Summit. So they've lived there ever since. And then about, I want to say 15 years ago, my grandmother moved here because she had an opportunity with the school district here. And so she was actually on the board for the Kansas City Public School District for 5 to 10 years, until she kind of parted ways with them because she was a little bit too radical, and she had a lot of views that didn't really fit with the budget at the Kansas City Public School District, so her ideas were just a little bit too radical, so she headed out from here. But she has always been extremely focused on education, and providing for the youth. She was a principal for a long time at one of the middle schools in Waterloo, Iowa. She was a teacher at other schools in Iowa. She also taught in Saudi Arabia for 25 years. During a civil war, she taught English there.
That is so extremely random, but I love that.
It is, man. But it wasn't random for her. During the time she was getting her master's in graduate school, that there was a civil war there, and there was a huge opportunity for people to go there and teach, and kind of have it was a missionary kind of trip kind of thing.
That's beautiful, though. That's beautiful.
Yep. And so she also adopted some kids from El Salvador when she was teaching over there for a little while too. I think like 2 years. She had my mom while she was there. So, that's just a quick story on my grandmother. But so she's always been involved in education, and this building that we're in, when she found it when she saw it, she realized that, hey, this has been a Black-owned daycare for about 25 years, since like the 70s. And so she saw that it closed, and just really wanted to get that back up and running for the people in this community. Since she's been living east of here, off of Elmwood and Blue Creek, or what's it called? Blue Parkway. You know where that is? Sunfresh over there.
Yes.
So in the hood on the east side, basically.
Yeah. That's all you had to say.
We've been over there for 20 years now. So, the east side has really been a part of her heart. And so to get that daycare back up and running was huge for her, because she's talked to so many people from the community who went to that daycare, or had kids go to that daycare, or had some type of memory with this building because it was a beauty salon for a while. So she really just wanted to get that daycare back up and running. And that's why she bought the building foreclosed. And she gave an opportunity to the lady who was running the daycare to come back and run it. The business side of things just didn't work out. So we have new tenants now. But that is our goal, to keep that as a Black-owned daycare forever. And then this side of the building, we didn't really have a specific plan for. So about 5-6 years after we bought it and finished renovating it, that was about the time I graduated. And so I started managing the building, managing the leases, and calling contractors for repairs, and so on and so forth, getting new people to come look at it, maybe rent out the space downstairs, things like that, just little stuff. So then, since I had a background working in coffee shops, and I had a background working at multiple places, actually, in customer service. I worked every job you could think of. I promise you, it's been everything. From working in cornfields at 14 years old, to working call centers while I was in community college, to lots of other stuff in between, and lots of other hustles also. But, I had the background in running it, and I knew how to do it. So I was like, okay, let's go ahead and do this, since it's such a support for the building. We have office spaces, we got a yoga studio, we got our daycare up and running, we got the event space. Why not have something for people to come and mingle in and hang out, and give people something to do in the community, a resource that wouldn't be here otherwise, So, and then, like you said, having different people from different walks of life coming in and communicating with each other. So
I love it. And I want you to talk about the name of your guys' building, your community over there, and what it kind of means to you, what it actually means, and then also, what it means to you, um, before we continue to talk about some of the businesses you guys have going on in there.
Yeah. So equal-minded, I mean, that just goes back to, the different sides that I have and having an understanding of both my Black family and my white family, seeing, the mistakes that both sides make, seeing the constant cycle of hate that goes on between the two different cultures. And not only hate, but also there's love that isn't shown a lot between the two cultures that I see every single day. So having a level head going through that, and also, you know, one of the tough parts of being mixed sometimes, I think a lot of mixed kids will tell you this, is some of your white friends will say you too Black, and some of your Black friends will say you too white. So I like to think of myself as just equal-minded. I'm myself. I'm like, I can be somewhere in the middle. A lot of people don't think there's somewhere in the middle. But obviously, when I walk into a room, I can't say I'm a white person, of all things. I could say a lot of different things of what I am, but I can't say I'm white. So having that level head still, and being able to relate to a lot of different people and give empathy to a lot of different people, I think is where the name originated. I actually made it up when I was in high school selling t-shirts as like a side hustle, man. Like I was just printing out Brittany versus Jade for a fight one day. Like that was where it started. And are you well, are you team B or are you team J?
Oh
That's
my
how it
God.
started. And then, just doing little stuff here and there. And I had a little business for it. And then, I stopped doing that for a long time. And then when I was thinking about the coffee shop, we actually had originally partnered with someone else, a different business in the city. And they were going to open up a spot in here. And things just went south. It just didn't work out with them. So then I had to come up with a name on the fly pretty much and get all the materials and stuff. And I was like, hey, this name worked before. Let's try this, so.
Love that. I love that. So, I want to dive into, you guys started that in 2018, right? That's when you officially opened Equal Minded Cafe.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So when you first opened it, can we talk about like just a little bit behind the scenes? Like, did you guys already have the seats and the tables in the building already that you have set up for the coffee shop? Like there's a couch in there, there's a few tables next to the windows, there's a bookcase there, like a cool bookcase. The you have the behind the counter already. So I'm just wondering, was that already built out? What was the process of setting up the physical part of it? So the chairs and stuff like that, were you sourcing it? Was it already in there? Can you just kind of talk about that early process of the business?
Definitely. The all of the chairs and tables, Habitat for Humanity, Restore. If they had a little patch on them, I just grabbed some certain types of paint and just painted them over, or screwdrivered them back together, put a screw in it, got it back to going. There's a counter to sit at, a penny counter that says heads up KC. Me and my family actually built that together, glued all the pennies on it and just used an epoxy seal. And then the counter where the behind the counter, the coffee shop area, that we had a family friend who built that for us. We bought all the materials and he pretty much just donated his time. So that was built about 3 months before the coffee shop opened. And then everything else you see either was donated or it just came over time, honestly. The books, I had a lot of those already. My grandmother, like I said, she was a teacher for a long time, so she had tons of kids' books. The magazines, one of my grandmother's family friends, she donated most of the magazines, and then some of the other ones I've just collected, but she had a really good collection of magazines, of Time magazines and Secret Genius magazines and all this other stuff, and some what's it called? I prescribed to a few other magazines, you know what I'm saying? So, and then the artwork, I bought off some local artists here and there, which I try to support them, but some of them can be very expensive when they're good. So I don't have too many pieces yet, but we're getting there. But yeah, man, it's just been a slow build over time, and getting it where I can, but as low cost as possible.
I love it. And so I do want to talk about the business of coffee. So where do you source your guys' products? Or like, how do you, let's start with, how do you source the products? What websites are you going to? Who did you talk to that told you what websites or what distributors you need to go grab the coffee from? How do you know what's quality or what people are going to like? Are you like doing product testing for the first few months, things of that nature? Where do you source the coffee makers and stuff like that? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely, man. So when we opened up, one of our main goals was to remain organic with a lot of different stuff. So when I was looking at coffee roasters, I didn't want to become a coffee roaster quite yet. I don't know if I ever will yet. Might be a future plan, but I didn't want to become a coffee roaster. So I obviously was looking to outsource. We wanted to stay local and we wanted to stay organic. So the top two producers of that were Messenger and Broadway. Um, when trying to get in touch with Messenger, it was kind of hectic. They weren't as interpersonal like I like. And as well as they're a really big place. A lot of money, a lot of stuff going on, which like I'm not hating on them at all, but I just couldn't get in touch with them. And so when I got in touch with Broadway, they were extremely personal. They offered me my mom to come in and taste a lot of the different coffees that they have. They talked to us about where they get their coffee from, the organic side of it and what that actually means. They gave me a little bit of knowledge on coffee that I didn't have before, as far as Eastern versus Western cultured coffee. Um, and all of that. So I went with Broadway all the way. They're also one of the most well known in the city, which was a sell point for me because when in the coffee industry, who you get your beans from matters. When people hear a certain name that they're used to, familiar with, it makes a bigger difference for them. So tapping into that coffee market that's been here a long time in Kansas City, that gave us an entryway for a lot of people. I've had a lot of people who come in, oh, you have Broadway beans. Like, I'm coming back, I promise. And they even go to Broadway and they're like, they're doing good stuff with your beans. So as well as the proximity. Broadway is only 5 minutes away from us.
I love it. I love it. And during the first few months, obviously, with any business, you have to, really tap into the community and figure out how to build relationships with the people who are going to end up being your family. And by family, I mean your customers. So, how did you guys go about doing that? Was it social media? Was it just opening up and putting signs out throughout all up and down Troost? Was it already a popular destination? People are already walking up and down that and parking there and already seeing the destination. So how did you guys build your, I guess, initial community or customer base?
A lot of it came from internal, with us having the yoga studio upstairs and having a few different people who were leasing offices from us already, on top of the daycare clientele. All of those people were definitely our strong core of first few customers, as well as, my grandmother being involved with the education system here. That's a really close knit industry in Kansas City, the education industry, but also the early childhood education industry is it's leading in a lot of categories across the country right now. Our early childhood education in Kansas City, Missouri. So that is also a close knit community who was a huge support of it. And then everyone I met, I just gave them that interpersonal connection that I was talking about and made them feel welcome, gave them a sense of belonging, made them feel like it was their place, um, and I think that's one of the biggest things is word of mouth. It was huge for us, and social media played a part, but I feel like we really had to get that word of mouth and regulars coming back before social media really made an impact for us, at least. I know that's different for some other businesses, but um, you know, and yeah,
I love that.
walking up and down Truce too, talking to some of the businesses here, the few that were here. There weren't many when we opened at all, but now there's a lot more opening up.
Right on. And so the last thing I wanted to ask you about the cafe was how you find good employees. Like what's your hiring process look like? How do you think about, you know, who you want to have in there, who you want to be the first, face that people see and interact with, how you decide if this person is going to be a good fit for the culture you're trying to create in that space. So yeah, how do you go about your hiring process? Has that been a challenge, or have you been blessed with good employees? How's your experience been there?
Oh man, it's been up and down. I've been blessed with some really great employees. I've had a couple who weren't so great. I would say the toughest part is not finding employees. It's the retention of employees, the retention of good employees, I should say. But my process, I mean, I put up a sign on the door because, first of all, I would prefer people who have been to the shop before or come in already, who might have a little bit of understanding of the culture and the menu items, so that's first what I would prefer. Second thing I look at is the experience that they have. Do they have customer service experience? I'm looking at the types of jobs they have and the types of communication that they might have had to do in those jobs, because that's the number one thing for me when hiring someone is, can you give the customers the experience that I want them to have? Can you make them feel welcome no matter what type of energy they bring to you at first? Wait until they give you a reason to judge them before you judge them, kind of thing. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at how they're communicating with me in the interview. How is our one-on-one communication right here? Because if you can't communicate with me, you can't communicate with the customers. And then, of course, I would prefer to hire as many Black people as possible, but I don't always get that many who apply. Honestly, there's not many who want to work in coffee shops, or maybe they feel like they don't have the experience, so they can't do it. But that's probably the third, fourth thing I look at is experience in coffee. Do you have any type of experience in coffee? Do I have to train you completely on everything on coffee? So those are the things I look at during the screening process. But as far as like reaching out to find people, it's kind of been a lot of different things. I have a couple different people who I've met through the coffee shop who do HR, and they might know some people, or they might have some high school students who are willing, or so on and so forth, or that sign that I put up, like I said, or maybe I'll post something on social media. So I found a couple different people, a couple different ways, and some of them were references to each other, but it's kind of all over the board, trying to find someone specific to your business's culture.
I love it. I love it. I will say one thing. Every time I've came in there, every employee's always been super, fun, very, very, enjoyable people to conversate with. You come in, what's up? They're lively, they're smiling, and they're treating you with respect. They know what's the best item on the menu. When I'm that annoying guy that comes in and says, "Give me your favorite item," and it's always good, whether it's a drink or food. Also, y'all sandwiches is my bad, y'all. I know I don't be cussing on the podcast, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Y'all sandwiches be fucking good. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna lie. And you don't even be expecting it when you be going into like, certain coffee shops. You're not really expecting like a fire sandwich, but the sandwich be hitting. I ain't gonna lie. So just had to go ahead and say that. So you guys also have an event space on the property. Can you talk about what you've been doing with that and how you guys have been leveraging the event space to build community? I know a lot of young artists that are coming up, whether they're poets, whether they're hip hop artists, whether they're singers, whether they're visual artists. I've seen a lot of them come through different events that you guys have going on there. So can you talk about what you guys have been doing over there and how that's been fun and enjoyable to run?
Yeah, most definitely, man. So the event space has been a great thing, man. It's really been a blessing, and I've been blessed enough to be able to give that opportunity to a lot of different people. It's a resource that wouldn't be here otherwise. It's just an affordable space to do extracurricular things, to have fun, to join in communion, to network, to get to know people. And that's the type of stuff that this specific community needs. The East Side of Troost, it really needs something like more things like that, things to do that are keeping kids out of trouble, things to do that are informational, things to do where you can be given guidance and opportunities all around the board. So that's been a blessing to be able to do, as well as just the people that I get to meet. Like you said, a lot of different artists and a lot of up and coming people come through the space. I get to meet those people, hear their story, play a part in them achieving self-actualization, and essentially just build my community through it.
I love it. And you say the word self-actualization right there. And I wanted you to kind of elaborate on what you mean by that. You've said, your goal is to achieve self-actualization. Is a hard word to say. And then also help others achieve the same thing like you're doing. But can you explain for those who may not know what that means, what that looks like to you, and how you plan on, following through with that process?
Got you. So self-actualization, I guess, quick little background on that word. It stems from the theory of Maslow's hierarchy. It's one of the very first things you learn in being a psychology degree or intro to psychology, whatever you take. It's one of the very first theories you learn. And it basically talks about the basic needs of humans. So he categorized our needs on a level of necessity. And so at the bottom, you have your basic needs, survival, and reproduction, basically. Food and water for survival and reproduction are the basic needs that you need. And then as the scale goes up, it touches on a couple different things. I think the next thing is shelter and love. And then the next thing in that hierarchy is a sense of belonging, like I touched on earlier. And a lot of theorists believe that that's what separates us from animals, is right there at that sense of belonging, is where we start to separate from animals. The next thing is self-realization, which is where you realize your highest potential. And then the next thing is self-actualization, where you actually reach that highest potential. So there's a lot of theories on how you can reach that. There's a lot of theories on if it's actually a thing or not. But I believe that self-actualization does exist, and it only exists through shared experiences with other people. So that also ties into one of our mottos at Equal Minded Cafe is I am who I am because of who you are, or we are who we are because of who we all are. We're only as great as our weakest link, and we're only as great as the experiences that we share together. And that all ties into unity. You know, the only way that we can actually be unified is if we can share our experiences and actually give that true empathy that we touched on. So that self-actualization piece, like I said, is just reaching your highest potential, whatever that is, whatever that may be for you individually. It's different for every single person, of course, but once all of your other needs are met, and once you realize what your highest potential is, then that's when you can finally achieve it. And so me playing a part in that for people is me basically just either giving guidance or giving one step up to their next level, or maybe just being someone that listens to them, someone who understands them, relates to their situation, talks to them as an equal person. Whatever opportunity I'm able to present in a positive way.
I love that. I love that. And it kind of reminds me of the name of your guys' entire center, which is the Ubuntu Village, which if I'm remembering correctly is translates to essentially I am who I am because of who you are. So
Yes.
would you mind touching on that and the inspiration behind the name for the building and kind of what I am who I am because of who you are means to you?
Yeah, so that was it was actually philosophy that my grandmother adopted during her travels. It was something that she found and kind of really just ran with. Um, excuse me. But it originated in Uganda, actually. It's a philosophy of life that originated in Uganda in Africa, in a small village. And essentially, I guess another translation for it could just be community or togetherness. It means if I'm here eating and you're next to me and you're not eating, then that's not the right way of life. If you're starving next to me, we're going to starve together before I would eat in front of you, kind of thing. And it takes all of us for us to really achieve greatness or self-actualization. For any of us to individually achieve our greatness, it takes all of us to play a part in it. So that's the shortened scale of it. It was something that my grandmother adopted, and when she brought it to me, it was something that I had already it felt like common sense to me.
Right.
It felt like something I had been living by my entire life anyway.
Naturally. So. Yeah. I love that.
Right.
I love that. And so I kind of want to transition into your studies. So we've touched on it a few times throughout the conversation, but right now I don't know if you finished or if you're still currently studying at UMKC to become a counseling psychologist, I believe is the name of, or the career path that you're trying to go down. So can you kind of talk about, why you decided to go back to school, and talk about, I think it's an interesting conversation because oftentimes, especially right now, entrepreneurship has been like overhyped. Not to say overhyped in a bad way. Entrepreneurship's amazing and leads to a lot of amazing things. But like entrepreneurship has been put on this pedestal, and education in other forms such as university has been like reduced in terms of the eyes of young kids, not in like society at large, but young bucks coming up. And when I asked you about your feelings about business, you were like, yeah, I love the businesses, but the businesses are just my vehicle, my financial vehicle to help support me on this path to serving my community and the urban youth. And so I kind of just wanted to ask you the question about school and how that relates to, and that career relates to giving back to your community and to the urban youth, and self-actualization, and how that all gets mixed into one pot to create like the life and future life of DT.
Right. So, where should I start?
Let's start with, when did you go back to college, and why did you decide to, especially after you passed 20s, you already finished college, it's a stressful time for most people. What was that thing that kicked you in your chest and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna do it?
Well, I guess for starters, school school has always been like my kind of getaway, or like the one thing I felt like I was always great at. I was the type of kid who, like, I was good at a lot of different things. Like, yeah, I did wrestling, I did basketball for a little while, I did football for a long time, I did track for a long time, not just sports, but I did math decathlons, all this other stuff I was good at, but I was never like great. I was never number one at anything. But when it came to school, I excelled further than a lot of my peers in all types of school, like in writing and math, and science was my only bad subject. We won't talk about that, but in a lot of different things. So yeah, for me, after taking a 2-year break, I got my associate's degree in business, and I took that 2-year break to run the business. After taking that 2-year break, it just felt like a piece of me was missing. So that was reason number one for going back to school. It gives me some it gives me motivation for other things, I think. And I think there's more behind that as far as who I am. I just like starting new projects. I'm one person who can never just be doing one thing. I always need to start something new to give me motivation to finish the old. Is kind of how it works for me. This is the cycle that I go through. But so on top of that, I moved away from Kansas City for a very long time. And so moving back, I wanted to gain the opportunity for networking. I also wanted to gain the opportunity to tap into the market of college kids. And first, I had to learn how to be a college kid before I could. Since I took a 2-year break, I had to learn how to be a college kid again before I could really tap into what they're looking for, and some of the stuff we could do to get more college kids in here, and so on and so forth. And then the semester that I went back, of course, was COVID semester. So halfway through my very first semester back in school, we're online. And I'm like, wow, well, I can't tap into nothing I planned on tapping into. I
Right.
can't network, I can't get nobody in the shop. What am I supposed to do? And so I just went into grind mode with the school. But I think the third reason that I went back to school was that I realized my passion for helping people, and my passion for giving guidance to people, and being that voice of reason that I personally never had myself. As well as I told you about that pact that I made with myself and with my cousin at 14, where
Yes.
I wanted to impact as many people's lives as possible. So kind of selfishly, the overall reason I went back to school is that education is the best way to do that. The best avenue for me to make an impact on as many people as possible is through the education system. And I don't want to be a teacher, but I want to influence how people teach, and the curriculum, and the emotional, social emotional skills that are taught to kids, those types of things, and the guidance that's given to kids. I want to influence school districts to change those things, and to give counselors a more important role, and stop bringing in social workers who these kids have never seen before to tell them how they live their life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you've already started getting experience in, kind of being, an advisor or a guidance, person of guidance, as a youth director. And I believe you're a peer advisor or doing something at UMKC in regards to, just being able to interact with other individuals. Can you touch on those things that you're doing and that you're active in regards to UMKC and maybe other things within the community that have given you the opportunity to be maybe, I guess, in a mentorship setting?
Yeah. So at UMKC, I work for a program called Peer Academic Leaders. It's PAL. The acronym is PAL. It's kind of corny, but it's cool. The things we do are amazing for the students. We work with a majority freshman students, but there's some other students as well who might be on scholarships or might be on academic probation. And so those kids have a set amount of meetings that they have to do with us throughout the year. And during these one-on-one meetings, we basically just talk about goal setting. We talk about note taking, how you're doing in your classes. But there's no specific curriculum, so they're not graded on what happens in the meeting. So if a kid comes to me and he or she or they just want to talk about something that happened at home, or maybe they want to take a walk around campus together and talk about something else, we can do whatever that is. So there's a lot of freedom with it, as well as a lot of learning in it, for me to be a mentor, but also the students to gain social skills and navigating the campus. And most freshman kids, when they go to a big university, I mean, we're not a huge university, but when they go to a big university, they're like so overwhelmed and they don't know how to talk to people. So someone to kind of guide them through that, as well as there's a class that all freshmen are required to take. It's called First Semester Experience. And so we help co-teach that class. So we're in there paired with another professor from the school, talking to the kids about, honestly, a lot of diversity and inclusive conversations. So there's movies assigned to them, there's books assigned to them, and then they come to the class and we discuss it together. So that's really interesting sometimes to have kind of like, they have their peer, me, standing there kind of either voicing with them or voicing against them. And they have the professor standing there, either voicing with them or voicing against them. And we have these debates, man, these conversations about life and stuff going on. One of the things is we watch Black Panther, of course, and we talk about a lot of the like individual lessons that are within Black Panther. Like, why do you think they put this in there? Or why do you think they created their own language for the movie? And so on and so forth, little stuff like that. So that's honestly been amazing, man. So many lessons learned in that. And my boss, I got promoted actually to senior pal. So there's only three of us, and we oversee the whole program. We help her manage the program a lot. The program has grown since I started it a year and a half ago. There was 20 something kids who were pals. Now we have 64 and growing. So we were serving 700 kids at the school. Now we serve over 2,000 kids at the school. And then I also, believe it or not, I'm actually doing a research project for that program to get us more funding, long story short. Pretty much doing a research project talking about the effect that it has on the children, and how our mentoring skills are, if the kids are actually saying they benefit from it or not, things like that. And then I'm going to present that to the school to give us more funding.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Action in a lot of different ways. That's what matters, man. Consistent action. So I love it, man. This conversation has been dope so far. I really appreciate you, giving me some time to jump on the podcast today to talk a little bit about you and about what you're doing and some of your goals for the community and for yourself. And I really hope that the audience has been listening closely, because I think there's a lot of things they can pick up from, what you're trying to do for your community that maybe inspires them to do the same for their own. Before we wrap up today, I want to ask you a few quick questions. It'll be somewhat rapid fire, so try to give maybe a one sentence answer to some of these. All right. So, all right. So, Kansas City, underrated, overrated?
Underrated. It's one of the best opportunity cities for educational careers, real estate, small business development.
Love it. UMKC, underrated, overrated?
UMKC. It's underrated in a sense of how good its programs are. It's overrated in a sense of how it actually supports the city and the history behind it as well, with J.C. Nichols.
Right. All right. One piece of advice for somebody who's an aspiring business owner.
Accept help, number one. Number two, use that help in the right way. and that can mean a lot of different things. You'll have to come chat with me about it.
Love it.
But one of the huge things I wish I would have done more when I was first opening is get ambassadors, get people who you give your product to for free, and they support you by posting your product and helping you with the social media stuff. You don't have to do it all alone with the social media.
I love it. All right. Underrated, overrated, grooming, male grooming. So, getting consistent lineups, beers, all that. So, underrated, overrated in a quick sentence.
Underrated, man. I think it's important. I think it's very important. Take care of yourself. Make sure you're comfortable with yourself. Whatever you're comfortable with is cool. And your lady as well, or significant other.
I love it. All right. So, it's your last day on earth. This isn't a one sentence answer. You can give however long answer. This is going to be our final question of the day. It's your last day on earth. You're 140 years old. You've lived a long, fruitful, fulfilling life. You've done everything you've wanted to do, but it's your last day on earth, and your great-great-grandkids are sitting at your feet, and they ask you for one piece of advice on how to live life. What are you going to share with them?
Man, I got to go with the old Mufasa here. I'm going to smack the kids upside the head.
Buku.
They're going to say, ow, that hurt. Why'd you do that? I'm going to be like, it doesn't matter. It's in the past. You can either learn from it, or you can either learn from it. That's it.
Nah, Lucky, I like that. Shout out to Mufasa. Shout out to Lion King. Man, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys have enjoyed this conversation with our guy DT Young. Let's say his full name because it's a king. It's a king named Dontavious Young. Business owner of Equal Minded Cafe, property manager to Ubuntu Village on Troost. Go check out the best sandwiches for coffee in the area. I know y'all probably gonna pull up there for coffee, but pull up there for the sandwiches, man. Go follow them on Instagram. I'll have him share all that here in a second. Make sure you follow them, pull up to the events, all that if you live in the Kansas City area. And if you don't live in the Kansas City area, but you just want to support another black brother, another human, man, at the end of the day, then I'll let him let you guys know what his social media is. So go ahead and share where people can find Equal Minded Cafe, where they can find you, and how they can support you or your business.
All of our socials are just at Equal Minded Cafe. Me personally, I'll type it in the chat here. Might make it a little easier for you. Dontavious T Young, that's me personally. On Instagram, I'm also on Facebook, just under Dontavious Young. But Equal Minded Cafe is the @ for all of our other social medias. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, where else? Yelp and Google Business, of course, and a couple other places. But
I love it.
Yeah, come check it out.
And before we hop off here, everything he just said will be in the description. So we will be tagging them in the description. So if you don't remember what he just said and you just still want to follow them or pull up on them, all that will be in the description. So go leave a 5-star review, click the links in the description, support the family. And before we hop out of here, can you let them know the address? Because they need to pull up to Equal Minded Cafe, man. You got to let them know social media's address, plug. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. We're at 43rd and Troost, 4327 Troost Avenue, Kansas City, Missouri. We're about 5 blocks from the Nelson. That's us on the east side of the street.
We love it. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the College Stutzer Show. This is your boy, C-I-double-Z-Y, you dig, signing out.